To record this session. For those who aren't able to make it, or if you're just trickling late, Ashton, you want to start us with the recording,
Gotcha. Thank
or
you
is it
for the
already
reminder.
recording? All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 20th. We are here for the end of year closeout and inventory management. This. I'm Kendall.
Let's see, I think to save on bandwidth, I'm going to encourage everyone to turn their cameras off, including me. And then I'll just let's all mute ourselves. And then Kendall, I think we're having some kind of connectivity issues, but I think it's because people are on camera. So maybe if we just all save our bandwidth and then pick up whenever you're ready. Kendall, are you still there? If not, that's fine. I'll keep going. Okay, well, I'll keep going. So thank you for joining us. Like Kendall said, today we're going to be going over inventory closeout and best practices for your inventory, and then a couple reporting reminders. So I'll just keep going here. You know our team by now. Here's a list of everybody. For housekeeping, like I said, if you could, turn your camera off and keep yourself muted just to save on bandwidth. WebEx is such a treat to work with. So as you've already seen, it's kind of glitchy sometimes. So I encourage you to ask any questions and utilize your mic and the chat, but keep your camera off if you can. And then also, if you haven't put your name and your organization in the chat, please do. It helps with attendance when we're not able to download data from WebEx. And as Kendall mentioned earlier, this recording will be posted in the weekly listserv. So for anyone who is unable to attend, you'll get that webinar link later in the week. Okay, so let's see. Today we're going to be going over some procedures for inventory, record retention requirements, any final expenditures for your 21st century expenditures for cohort 16 and 17, some state reporting requirements, and then evaluation. And then we'll answer any questions. Let's see, Kendall lost connection and is trying to rejoin. Sounds good. You'll mainly be hearing from me today, so. Okay. So I'll pick up. And I'm also trying to let people in, so I apologize if I'm a little bit everywhere today. And Susan is in the chat as well. She's saying good morning to everybody, and she's glad that we're all able to join. She has a little sickness today, so just know that we are in good company with leadership and programs. All right, so I'll get us started. The best way I know how, by going over some of the Code of Federal Regulations. So the citation that I'm going to be using right now, or going to be going over, is 300 Part 12, which basically states, it's stated in the first bullet there, anything purchased with 21st century funds is federally owned by the federal government. So as the subgrantee, you're responsible for that property. And as such, you must send in an inventory listing of all of those items every year to the pass-through entity, which is DPI. Let's see. Perfect. So a couple of things. When we say property, I'm obviously not referring to land or buildings because those are unallowable expenditures for 21st century. I'm more referring to equipment and items purchased for your 21st century program, and anything that's listed in your approved budget or inventory listing. So for cohort 16s, this isn't anything new. You're aware of how to complete the inventory listing because it was a required document for this year. But this serves as a reminder to update your 21st century listing. So we want to make sure that it reflects all of your new equipment that you purchased within your year 3 programming, but it's also any information as far as status or any items that got disposed, any updated information needs to be updated on those as well. So what goes on an inventory listing? The things that go on an inventory listing are inventoried items with a unit cost of $5,000 or more. So those items would be considered a capitalized asset. So of course we want to make sure that those are on our inventory, as well as items with a useful life of more than 1 year. So when we think about inventory, we're not really thinking about the consumable things like paper, pencils, anything that has a useful life. Extending a year is usually what would be found on an inventory listing. So that includes furniture, equipment, computing devices, anything budgeted in the 5350-461 code or 462 codes. So that's furniture, equipment, and computing devices. And as your fiscal monitor reviews your inventory listing, they're going to cross-reference it with your budget. So if it's in your budget, we are anticipating that you've bought those things. And so if it's not found on your inventory listing, we may, reach out and say, hey, did you buy this printer? Okay, awesome. We need that to be on your inventory listing. Okay, I think I pretty much covered everything on that. So the inventory listing, what does it look like? This is a template that we provide in CCIP. Like I said, it was a required document for cohort 16s, but this is a reminder that it needs to be updated. And then for cohort 17, it's found under optional documents, but it is required that you fill out this or that you send a inventory listing into DPI. Okay, so let's go over the template. There are a couple sections on here. The general information is where you would identify the item with the serial number or ID number. The acquisition information is where you would put any information on, like where did you buy the item? Where did it come from? How much did it cost? Acquisition data like the cohort information. So this is an ongoing list of everything that is utilized by your, not just your 21st century program, but your organization. The third little column, or the third little category rather, is status information. And this is what's going to be periodically updated. So your cohort 16s, what kind of information are you going to update? You would want to update conditional information. So like, what's the condition? Is it new, good, damaged? Physical location. Where are your items located? Have you moved them in the past couple of years? We want to make sure that we're keeping up with the physical location of any inventoried items. And then the fourth column would be disposal information, which includes date of disposal, evaluation method of what the value of that item was. Please reach out to your fiscal monitor before disposing any equipment, and we'll help make sure that you're documenting things appropriately. And then the note section is imperative as well. So before we move on, just know that this is a template that you do not have to use, and it's not a requirement that you use this template. However, it is required that you submit an inventory listing, and there are required characteristics that you document in your 21st century inventory. And I'm going to try to keep up with the chat as well. So let me see. So things like library books do not need to be inventoried. Correct. Those are supply type items where I would argue that they do have a useful life over a year. Those are not the kind of inventoried items we're looking for. Now, if you're thinking, I might think of maybe curriculum, STEM kits, those kind of like tactile materials like that. Sure, but we're mainly looking at furniture, computing devices, things like that. Keep your questions coming though. Okay, so like I said, you don't have to use this template. It's not required, but there are characteristics that you have to document. So What are those characteristics? I'll spend all day talking about the Code of Federal Regulations. Okay, so it is your responsibility as a subgrantee to manage your property, to manage 21st century property. And one of those management requirements is to keep a detailed property record. So they tell us what that property record includes. So you need to ensure that all of your 21st century purchases, as far as inventory and equipment, have a description, a serial number, or an ID number with them. We need to, DPI is making sure that you have a funding source identified for all property. You're going to want to make sure to keep up with who holds the title, so the title holder information, any acquisition information as far as the date it was acquired and the cost, federal share of the purchase. So what that means is if you bought something maybe 50% 21st century and then 50% organization, what's that split? Current location, use, and condition, and then any disposition information. So those are the required characteristics that the Code of Federal Regulations says. Again, the easiest thing that you can do is download the template. If you provide a document that's an inventory listing and it doesn't have these characteristics, we may just recommend that you use the one located in CCIP. Let's see. Did you say reach out to your PA before disposing information or disposing inventory? I said fiscal monitor, but really if you reached out to your PA, I'm sure they would have some information and they might pass you to us too. So yeah, before disposing any kind of federally purchased equipment or items, reach out to your PA or fiscal monitor and we'll get you the right information as far as how to document. Okay. We'll keep going. Okay, Katrina said, yes, please reach out to your PA or fiscal monitor.
Yeah, I'm trying to man the chat for you, Ashton, until Kendall can get back on. Okay, good morning. Okay.
No, right. Good morning. It's good to hear your voice. It feels awfully quiet sometimes. Okay. So what happens at the end of the grant period or the end of the grant when your program no longer needs the property that has been acquired with the federal funds? So again, here's our citation 313C. Subgrantees must use the equipment for the 21st century program or project until it is no longer needed or let me just start over. Subgrantees must use equipment for the 21st century project or program for which it was acquired and for as long as needed, whether or not the program continues or is supported by the federal award. So even if the grant period ends, if you still are serving 21st century project and program goals, then you can still use the equipment. However, if the property or equipment and inventory is no longer needed for 21st century purposes or out of school time services, DPI will determine what to do with those items. And our instructions come from this citation. So I'll read the last sentence. When items are no longer needed for the original project or program, the equipment may be used in other activities in the following priority. So we will try to source it to other federally funded programs by the same federal agency. And if that's not possible, then we'll use the items for programming funded by other federal agencies. And this just makes sure that federal investments continue to benefit federally funded programming. Okay. So what does that mean for cohort 16s? It really is a case-by-case basis. So what will happen is whenever you turn in your inventory, it's due at the end of September, a fiscal monitor will reach out to you about your organization's plan to continue offering programming, out of school time programming, and then we'll just take it from there. So we might ask you some other interview questions like, are you continuing do you have a cohort? So if your program has an existing cohort, those items would just transfer to the existing cohort. Did your program operate on a Title I campus? Those are the kinds of things that determine what happens to your 21st century inventory ongoing. So again, because the grant year is not over until September 30th, that communication will not take place until September or October, once everything is officially wrapped up for cohort 16. So, what we're asking of you today is to update your inventory listing, and continue to update it throughout the summer if you're continuing to serve summer programming. But we will not reach out to you about how to really close out for inventory until September and October once everything is finalized. Okay, let's see, we got a question. I noticed the new column for cohort number. Do we do one asset inventory if we have multiple cohorts? Just note the cohort in that column, question mark. Also, capitalized inventory tab is different from the one we turned in last fall. Do we move purchases over $5,000 to that tab? Yes, absolutely. And I can go back to that example. So this is a new template where we've added a cohort number because it's imperative that you keep one inventory and you keep that acquisition data for any item that you purchase. So do we do one asset inventory if we have multiple cohorts? Yes. One asset inventory per organization, and then you'll just continuously update that column from, like, if you had Chromebooks and you purchased them with cohort 14 funds, we want to see those on there. And it's just an ongoing list because you're the same organization, the same program. It's, just one inventory listing. And then as far as the asset inventory, yes, there is a new column for capitalized assets. So if you have any purchases over the unit cost of $5,000, that's where you would identify those items. So yes, if you had an old inventory listing that identified purchases, you would just move them over. Perfect. All right. Okay, so for cohort 16, your year 3, although it's wrapping up, there are still some important responsibilities and rights that still remain in effect. So I have to remind you guys of those. DPI retains the right to access any records related to 21st century, even after the grant is over. And this includes related documents, fiscal supporting documentation, and anything else relevant to your program, even after closeout. So DPI reserves the right to disallow or recover funds later on if there are issues that are found in an audit or a review. And note that usually these audits are conducted by agencies like U.S. Education, the Department of Education, the Office of the State Auditor, or other programs. So it's not necessarily DPI itself that's conducting these audits, but know that. The grantee must also return any funds that are due as a result of a refund, a credit, a correction, or adjustment. Okay, let's see.
Question in the chat.
I see. If your summer program ends in August, can we reach out to you before October as not to incur other rental costs? I think I might want some expansion on that. I don't understand how reaching out to us in August helps prevent rental costs. Let's see. EH, if you could expand on it a little bit. Maybe in the chat if you don't want to come off mute. And I can keep going too. Okay, to turn in inventory and move out of this space. Okay, so as I mentioned, you may not have to return any inventory. If you are, it's a case-by-case basis. So if you're continuing to offer programming or you served at a title, it sounds like you probably don't serve at a Title I school if you have a space that you're renting, but it really depends on what your next actions are. So unfortunately, reaching out to us in August, we're going to be doing a lot of things in August as far as onboarding cohort 18 and working on applications. So maybe just reach out to your PA and we can have some sideline conversations. We do not plan on returning. Okay, so that would be a plan where we need to collect that inventory. But like I said, let's have that conversation for your program specifically, and we'll save everybody else's time as well. Unfortunately, I don't know who you are, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ashton, this is Katrina again. Yeah, I was gonna just say I'm not sure what program that is, but if they could just reach out to their program administrator, and the PA would work with us to do that. As Ashton said, we will be really busy with applications and onboarding cohort 18. But if they could just reach out, I'm not sure which program it is. If they could just reach out to their program administrator and they'll work with us. Yeah.
Perfect. Great question, though. And I think it does exemplify how every program is going to be different. So that's why it takes single individual conversations with every program. Okay. So we talked about some disclosures on keeping record retention. Here, so, okay, so you keep your records according to the federal timeline. What's the federal timeline? Subgrantees must retain all federal award records for 3 years from the final date of reporting. So if this is your final year, it's going to be 3 years from this year. So, or 3 years from your final report. So if you submit an Erica or for PSU's Cash App, you're thinking about 3 years from your final expenditure report. So if you send in something in September of 2025, you're going to keep all of that data until September 2028. Records for real property and equipment acquired with federal funds must also be retained for 3 years after final disposition. So if you get instructions on disposition, know that that record retention requirement is also 3 years. Okay, so we have some other closeout information for you guys. So the state fiscal year is approaching. It's June 30th. If you're cohort 16, you've experienced this before, but if you're cohort 17, this might be new information to you, but hopefully not. What this means is that Erica will shut down on June 16th, and it will reopen on July 7th. So you're not going to be able to put in any expenditure request in Erica from June 17th to July 6th, but it will resume normal processing after July 7th. So what does that mean? It means that we need to determine our balances and make sure that we need to start really becoming aware of what our budget balances are and what our grant award balances are. When you're in Erica, ensure that you're drawing down old funds first. So if you have any installments that are coded from grant year 2024, we want to make sure to use those first. Let me see if I can.
She is.
I'm going to see if I can mute this person. Let's see. Okay. Okay, cool. If you have questions, you can for sure come off mute. Perfect. So ensure that you're drawing down grant year 2024 funds first. Start really understanding it, or start really getting a grip on how much money you have left, because we want to make sure that we don't leave any money on the table. Let's see. And then the very last day to reimburse in Erica will be September 22nd. And any expenditures related to 21st Century must be made on or before the 30th of September. So you might see a little discrepancy in those dates. If you are one of the very few programs that has expenditures that occur from 9/22 to 9/30, one final draw is extended to your program. We can open up Erica in October for you to process those expenditures. But that's kind of, kind of rare because most programming is well over by September 30th. So if you're anticipating that, know that we have a plan for you to request reimbursement if it's necessary. Okay, a little bit more on Erica. Like we said, the last date to request is the 16th, but that doesn't mean you're going to receive your funding or that reimbursement request on the 16th. The fund requirement date or the processing it's the processing date, and you'll see, I'm sure you've seen this screen. Maybe you haven't read it before, but I encourage you to read it. That's just the processing date is then on the 20th, and then it could be up to 15 business days until you see that request. So if you put in your request on the very last day at before 2 p.m., doesn't mean you're going to, receive any funding on the 16th. So be aware of that. And then also just want to highlight, if you have any questions about Erica, it's not managed by 21st Century, so please reach out to the systems_accounting email address that's listed on the welcome page. Okay. I've already kind of talked about the importance of becoming aware of your budget balances. Hopefully you keep up with a budget versus actual every time you submit. But there are some new reporting systems, or 2 new reports in Erica that you can utilize to cross-reference your internal reports if you haven't been, or if you're just curious to see how correct your internal systems are. So for cohort 17s, as you're building your continuation budget, your continuation application budget, you're going to want to utilize these reports to cross-reference any budget code balances and any fiscal year balances. For cohort 16s, it's really imperative that you're not leaving any money on the table. We want to make sure that you know how much money you have left to spend. It's April. If you have summer programming, let's really knock it out of the park and ensure that you're responsibly and, spending down your remaining budget in alignment with your budget on or before the September 30th deadline. Okay. And then lastly, there are some state reporting requirements. So North Carolina state law requires that any non-governmental entity receives or files annual reports. So if you receive funding between $1 and $99,999, there are some required reports that you have to send in no later than 3 months after your organization's fiscal year end. So those reports are listed there. If you've received more than $1 million in state or federal funds, the required reports are the same, except for you're additionally required to have a single audit or a yellow book audit. And that requirement is to be submitted 6 months after your organization's fiscal year end. If you have any questions about this, you can reach out to us. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can on that. All right, so some final reporting final reporting stuff on attendance. 21 DC data is due July 31st for the 2024-2025 school year. And that includes some of the instructional staff surveys. So those things are due. For summer 2025, we don't have a due date for that, but it opens June 2nd, so it will be opened in the next upcoming week. Let's see, anybody have a question?
Don't see any additional questions in the chat right now.
Cool, awesome. Inventory listing, like I said, it's due September 30th. And then the annual evaluation report is also due September 30th in CCIP. And that brings me to what is the annual evaluation report? And I'll pass it to Kathleen.
Thank you so very much, Ashton. As we look on the next screen, I just wanted to provide a reminder to all cohort 16 and 17 subgrantees about the September 30th deadline that Ashton just mentioned. The reporting is very similar to past years. So for cohort 16 subgrantees, you should be very familiar with the report, as this is your 3rd year of implementation. However, with cohort 17, this will be their first time completing the report. So I just wanted to provide a brief overview about the annual evaluation reporting and expectations. So basically, overall, the purpose of the subgrantee annual evaluation report is to ensure that that all awarded organizations comprehensively reflect on and have evidence to support the extent which your program has met enrollment levels, budget expenditures, attendance targets, and impact on participants' engagement in learning. More specifically, the evaluation reporting template will ask subgrantees to provide data regarding programming for the 24-25 school year and summer 2025, if applicable. And since summer programming is optional, not all subgrantees provide summer programming. So those that do not provide 21st century funded programming for summer 2025, please note that in the template you would just skip over, or you do not have to respond to those summer specific questions, items, or tables in the report. And also please note, if you don't do summer programming, that the due date we mentioned is by September 30th, so not on. So that's, I just want to let you know, feel free to complete and submit your report anytime after your program implementation ends in 2020, after the 2024-25 school year. So again, if you're not doing summer programming, feel free while you have all the data and information and observations fresh in your mind. We encourage you to submit that earlier if you prefer, if that works best for your team. Another question I get about the evaluation reporting is about if you have multiple cohorts. So if you are providing cohort 16 programming and cohort 17, one question I often get is, do I submit one report or two reports? And the answer to that will be two reports. If you are operating a cohort 16 funded program, you'll need to submit a cohort 16 specific annual evaluation report. And if you're doing the cohort 17 programming, then that would have its own separate evaluation report. So I just wanted to let those know about that. Another question I often get about the subgrantee evaluation report is about how to access the template and about submitting the report. So the reporting template is currently available on the Serve Out of School Evaluation website, which I'll share at the very end here, and I'll put in the chat after I'm finished talking. So you can download both the template as well as there's a guidance document that you can download as well that will help walk you through and answer some more questions about the reporting requirements. So once that you've downloaded, and in terms of submitting, once you've downloaded and completed the reporting template, then you'll need to upload it into CCIP under required documents. So again, this information, the template and the guidance document will be made available, but at any time that you have questions about accessing, completing, or uploading your annual evaluation report, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll share my email address at the end of the last slide here and put it in the chat for those that don't have it. So as you can see here on the screen, so now that we kind of know the when is it due, why are we doing it, when is it due, and next, and how to upload it, how to submit it. The next part I wanted to do is just do a brief walkthrough of kind of what types of data you'll be asked to provide as part of the subgrantee annual evaluation report. So the first bullet you'll see in terms of participants, they'll be asked, the report will ask you about the number of participants proposed in your original proposal versus those that were actually served by site. So again, this report will be oftentimes very site specific. So some grantees only provide services at one site, while a majority have multiple sites. So again, just keep that in mind that for those in cohort 17, this will be oftentimes site specific with the data that you'll be providing. Except for the next part, which is the budget. The budget is more of an overview of the budgetary. You'll have more budget specific requirements, of course, to Ashton and the fiscal team. So for this the purposes of this report, the requested budget information is pretty general in nature. It's really looking at the funds, the allotted funds that were expended during the school year and summer in a way that we can help to calculate that cost per students that were served in the after school or summer programming. So again, that'll be more of a general nature in terms of thinking about budget. And then for the academic enrichment as well as the family engagement opportunities components of the report, really this part is looking at reflections on the success of those academic enrichment and family services that you provided to students in the family, and really to help assess what program components work well and to really think about what are those identified areas for targeted improvement. And so as part of the report, cohort 17 will actually have more questions to answer because there will be more questions. There'll be guiding questions about, with these data and with this information you provided, how do you plan to make improvements for next year? So, however, since cohort 16 is closing out, and that's why we're here, we really think about the information that you provide here. You won't have to answer that question, but we really see that the information of collecting it and reflecting to help in terms of sustainability for future efforts and endeavors that you have, whether funded by 21st Century and or other funding sources. The additional pieces in the report focus on collaboration and partnership. So within this section, the report will guide you to reflect on your overall community outreach, staffing, professional development for staff and volunteers, your transportation provided to participants, and the extent to which you were able to leverage community resources for your 21st Century programming for this past year. In addition, you'll be asked to provide the hours of student attendance in your programming by site. And again, this will be information that will come from 21 DC that you can summarize and provide in this kind of comprehensive package. And really looking at this attendance helps to think about how the dosage of the participants in your program by site kind of impacts or reflects the anticipated outcomes that you're seeing. So of course we anticipate with that larger and more intense dosage of services that the expectation is that we would hope to see greater outcomes and more intense outcomes for those participating in our program. And then in addition, we'll be asking for some information for disaggregation of your instructional staff survey results by site. And so with this in mind, on the next slide, I just wanted to remind people that that there is a guidance document and sample surveys for grantees that have been shared and is available at the Serve site as well, website. But just wanted to remind everyone to remember to complete all the instructional staff surveys and enter all your instructional staff survey findings in 21 DC so that then you have the information you need to complete the end of the annual evaluation report. So that's just a reminder for the instructional staff survey to make sure you're completing those before the end of the school year. And then on the next slide, just wanted to here's what the guidance document looks like for the subgrantee annual evaluation report. So in terms of next steps, I just encourage you to look over, download the reporting template, review this guidance document that provides more details about the reporting, and then make sure that you just have it marked on your calendar for that September 30th deadline. And as I mentioned earlier, on the next slide, I've provided a link to the Serve website. And again, I'll put it in the chat, which provides the additional information about the instructional staff surveys, as well as the template and the guidance document for the subgrantee annual evaluation report. And in addition, there's my email address. And if you have questions about either of these evaluation data collection efforts or reporting expectations, please don't hesitate to contact me via email, and I will answer any questions. And if there's any questions now, let me know. can look at the chat and see if there's any.
We had one, but I think we may have covered it because they were your frequently asked questions. So can we start writing this report now? And I think you can expand, but if you're not serving summer, go ahead.
Okay. Oh yeah. Let's see. So yeah. Oh, I can't really see the question. Oh, let's see. Sounds like my screen is not big enough. Let me see if I can pull. Can you read it out loud, Ashton? Sorry.
It's just kind of vague. Can we start writing this report now?
Okay. Oh yes, please do. Yeah, you as long as you have what you really want to do is make sure that you have all your information in 21 DC first, because that is going to be a resource that you're going to go to. But yes, I definitely review it because some of it's more qualitative data and reflection and thinking maybe with your team, like what did work well, how, you know, what were those components of our program that we thought were most beneficial to seeing those positive outcomes that we saw. So I would definitely say that yes, starting to think about and gather and reflecting on your program now can all be done. But in terms of actually, you know, filling out the reporting template, and I would say just you probably just want to make sure that you have all your information in 21 DC for the 2024-25 school year before you start completing the report template.
Awesome.
Was there another question, Ashton, in there? Sorry.
There was. It was where the form is located, and we put it in there. So
okay. And in addition, later in the summer, we really wanted to make sure we were on today's call because we were talking about cohort 16 closeout. So we wanted just to make sure that that was on cohort 16's radar, especially those without summer programming. But the information will be, you know, in a few weeks, you know, we'll have more reminders as the summer goes on about the September 30th deadline with the attachments to or the links to the resources. So this isn't the last time cohort 17 will hear about it. They'll hear about it several more times, you know, through the listservs throughout the summer, but we just really wanted to make sure that cohort 16 especially had it on as they're thinking about their closeout planning.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's keep going through here. So we got some, let's see, we got a question. Does the end of year report include summer 2025 programming for cohort 17?
That's a great question. Yes, and it does. And that is why the report is due. It's not only the federal year as well. Let's do September 30th. Because that allows to include both school year and summer for the September 30th deadline. So yeah, so that will be all inclusive. So that goes back to we think about our data, you know, and completing our report now. You could do you can start filling out the report for your the school year implementation, but then also then hold it, and then you would want to then add on the summer data as well for the final submission at September 30th.
Yeah, I should say that too. Everything in CCIP is due by September 30th. If you can complete it before, that would be great. If not. Okay, so some upcoming things for cohort 17, the continuation application technical assistance webinar is coming up. That'll be within the second week of June. We don't have a finalized date yet because we are hoping to have it in person. So keep that on your radar and pay attention to the listserv. Additionally, some summer programming visits will be scheduled by your PA for cohort 17. So if you have summer programming and your PA has reached out to you, keep that on your radar as well. And then lastly, the Foundations Conference is going to be the last week of July. So that'll be hosted in Flat Rock, North Carolina at the Blue Ridge Community College. Registration was due a while ago. So hopefully everybody is registered for that, and we can't wait to see you there. That's all we have for you today. So a short 45-minute little webinar. If you have any questions, you can come off mute, come on camera if you want, put them in the chat, and we'll answer them. But thank you guys for being amazing, and hopefully we'll hear from our cohort 16s, but if not, this is the last time I hear from you. Thank you so much for a great 3 years. hopefully we will have an easy landing here in your last little bit. So.
And hi, Ashton. Hi, everyone. It's Gina. It's a correction. The Foundations Conference will start that Tuesday evening for all sub-grantees. Tuesday, July the 29th.
For all sub-grantees. That should be in the listserv, huh?
It is in the listserv.
Okay.
Just didn't want any confusion.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to stop recording, but we'll still be on.